Alrighty, so week 13 in JavaScript. And in week 13, we're going to finish for now. Although I don't feel like I'm done because there's still some more things I want to do to form validation. But I want to move on to async code, which, by the way, we've already been introduced to with our inline deletion. So, but actually calling endpoints, very, very helpful to know how to do, and being able to process payloads that come back from endpoints. But anyway, at this point in week 13, we're going to have attendance code challenge. We're going to have 13.1 code challenge, and then you'll have decision app step 5. And shouldn't be a surprise what we will do there, which is basically implement your form validation. But I've already got in my head how I'm going to have that flow. So I'm going to do that after I finish a couple things here. I'm going to make a suggestion at this point on technical interviews. If you think, by the way, so that you have an informed decision, because at this point, if you're not on the schedule, you might be thinking maybe I'll get through this class without it. Well, here's what you can do to know if that's the case. In Canvas, right? And I view as a student when I need to look at it as a student, but that's the way you look at it. In your grades, you can go all the way to that item, which is a technical interview. And if you think you're not going to do it, or you want to know the impact that it has on your grade, then put 0 in there, because that's the benefit of being able to do the what if scenario. What if I don't do it? What's the impact to my grade? Now, what I will tell you is after Thanksgiving, if you're not on the schedule, I will do this. And not as a you can't do it, but as a I just want you to know the impact that it has on your overall grade. Okay? So that's my suggestion for that. And again, if you want to chat about it, please reach out. One thing as I was reflecting on last week, I realized in the radio buttons when I was talking about the whole if it was checked or not, that it didn't fall in line with the HTML validation, that high level kind of first run, and which is why we have the no validate in so that it doesn't trigger that. And I realized that actually I was not entirely correct in what I was thinking about it, because as I looked at both my app and the carbon footprint, it actually makes sense not to have them anything checked. Because then, could you check the first one by default? Sure, and we've had that attribute. But in this case, and you'll hear me talk about this when we get to the form validation, I want radio buttons to be unchecked, have not unchecked attribute, because that's part of our validation, is to make sure they've done it. And it just made sense once I actually gave it a little more thought. I was like, wait a minute, that. So I just wanted you to know, radio buttons, in this case, we're going to both for our apps, and you'll see it. I'm going to keep this in the carbon footprint. Now, we will ultimately end up removing the no validate later, but for now, we're going to keep it in place. Okay? All right, so before I get into the code challenge that you're going to do, I want you to add a few things. And these are things I feel like this style guide is something, I'm going to do quicker next semester, right? And I want you to add this. So in your style guide, now I ended up with 6 items, so these are new items, is add camel case for all, or I should say use camel case for all functions and variable names. Okay, I think I have mine. Do I have mine up? No, I don't. But in this case, I'm just giving you, put this in there, right? And the use of alerts. So alert is a prompt that comes up. This is a very, JavaScript is moving away from this for several reasons. We didn't implement it in ours. I'm just telling you, if for some reason during your development, and just for your future knowledge, the use of an alert is very much discouraged. The reason we do an inline notification is that so many users may have alerts blocked, okay, pop-up, and those are considered pop-ups. So that's why it's non-standard, and it's just not a good way to handle the user interface, okay? And this is the next one. So, use of outside code is discouraged. Now, it's not to say you can't help yourself by understanding, but when you use somebody else's code as your own, right? So it's discouraged. But if you do, you need to note where the source came from. Okay. And that, and maybe you get into a fine line of, hey, I looked at something, but if you actually implement that in your code, you need to note that, because the idea is that you're definitely, I mean, you're coding along with me with a carbon footprint, but in your decision code, that is intended to be your code. If it is not your code, remember, you are responsible for that code for technical interviews. So you need to include note, and if I ask you, I've probably, it's been flagged for me for some reason. So make sure, and most of you are doing a good job about this as I ask about, and we often have extended conversations there. Okay. Oh, did I outside? Oh, actually, I ended up writing it this way. Oh, I'm sorry. So you can drop this one. So it's actually third-party code. Avoid it if it's essential. Provide attributes, contribute attribution. Like anything in life, by the way, that should be true. And then you can commit that, which, by the way, you can have that on week 12, but you'll end up now, as we go into the code challenge part of this, is you'll actually end up copying it over. So you can, make that change and then, or copy it over into week 13. I'll fix that before you guys come in here. Okay. For you folks, come in here. All right, so we're going to have 2 code challenges, and let's go over them, what they're going to be. Remember, there's nothing you need to post in the discussion. I will, as my grading, actually look at it, and then once you have replied, and I'll show you in a minute what you'll want to reply with, then you'll go watch the solution, then update and commit that. So here's what's going to become even more true, is that as I turn in this week to continuing the idea of checkpoints being code challenges, it's really important that those commit messages show up, because, like, as an example, one commit message is going to be a checkpoint item. So when it's not there and I see a solution code in there, it affects your grade. So make sure you've done that. Okay? All right, so let's go look. I've given you a markdown file here. Right, so here is the attendance. So what you're going to do here, right? So normal stuff, take your week 12 setup, right? Do your commit message here for, right? And if I've mentioned to you, you need to fix something, make sure you do that here. You want to really start with anything I've explained here. So anything I've given you feedback in the past, most of you are getting this, but a couple of you I've given notes to make sure you fix certain things in your, and especially if code doesn't work, of course that is true. All right, so now what we're going to do is you're going to write, here's your rule 9, 10, and 11. These are actually stuff we've pretty much covered, right? So annual mileage must be non-negative, and public mileage must be non-negative, and then flight must be selected flight travel, right? And then here's your messages that you will use for that. And then remember, right, to remove the checked attribute, I just talked about that. For the flight travel, because that is a checked. And then once you've tested it, make sure you remove that existing error message as well. Okay, so then what you'll do here is you will, once you finish your attempt, right, you will say CC code challenge in these here. Okay, so this is what you've done for those. Okay, so then you'll now do your second code challenge. So this should also not be a surprise, as you're going to go through each file, and I want you to do them in this order, because honestly, what you want to do is go through the modules and then end up, oh, I have one more, which is the app.js. I'll make sure, because I do have that one that I did. That's the last one, and it's the biggest one, right? So you'll go through each of these, and what you'll do is you'll convert any function into R, and now I do actually need to go get it, so let me go get it. So what you'll end up doing is refactoring. So we're not changing functionality, but it is really important to test in case you got something wrong. But all the functions now need to be a named Again, you don't have to change the name, equals, and in this case, I do want you to include the parentheses. I understand that if it's a single item you're passing, that you don't have to, but I want them included. Arrow function, right? And then here, right? So this now you'll go through your code, right? So you'll go through your form.js, and then you'll do a commit, you'll do through your, and here's the idea. Do it, test it, do it, test it, because you don't want to get all the way through this, and you can't do a global replace. I mean, you could on things that don't have anything passed into them, but I don't recommend that, and you can see that the way I've laid this out is specifically in this order. Like I said, by the time you get here, you will also see one for app.js, because I consciously did this. I did this yesterday, went through and did it. It took me a few minutes to get through it, but it's a good exercise. And going forward, and you actually will end up doing this on your step 5 as well, because I want our functions to be consistently named with arrow functions and a variable, a named arrow function. Okay, so do calculator, storage, results. Oh, I must have. That's what I did. Is I just didn't push it because I remember updating this. So by the time you get here, you'll see all the files you need to go through, and then app.js will be the last one. And that one, and again, do it, test it to make sure you get through. Okay. All right, let's come back here. So that is 40 points for the first one, 40 points for the second one, right? So it's not to say you have to have them perfect, but you will need to have made a effort here. That's how I will grade these. This is what you will see when I am grading code challenges. Did you make the effort to get to the solution? Okay, and these are things we've done before, so it shouldn't be a big difference. Or it shouldn't, it's just time on task on this one, I think, because we've done all those rules as well. All right, so now, once you do that, and then what will happen now is the next thing will actually be me going over it. And if you have anything you need to change, then you'll need to say after attendance solution. Now, in this case, right, I would look at those commits as part of this. Remember, going forward, because you'll see this in 13.1, I'm going to do that one as soon as I do the solution now. I'll go over, because 13.1 is also going to be a code challenge as well. And then you'll do your attempt, and then you'll look at the solution. 13.1's a little more challenging, but it makes sense once we start talking about it. Okay, we're not there yet. So now reply with any suggestion on things you would add to the style guide. And then reply to a student that does not have a reply. So it's basically 10 points for the reply, 10 points for the reply to a student, right? So that will make up 20 points for this one. So if there's something you feel like we should add, give us things to consider that we should add based on the best practices we've implemented now in our code base. Okay? All right. Talk to you later.